The biggest risk to your life, to your business, is not being wrong. It's being confused. No business is out there saying, we don't have enough ideas. You're not starved for ideas, you're starved for execution. The trick is, how do you say no to a good idea? That's the killer, right? Because saying no to a bad idea is easy. Not acting on any idea is the biggest sin. The thing is, a tool is never going to give a shit about you. It's AI powered, whatever, right? But it's really human powered. There's really human beings here who give a shit about you. We care about your outcome. It's not wrong to be financially ambitious. You can still be modest. You can still serve the needs of your learners. You could still be a good human being, but you could still make yourself 10 grand a month. There's nothing wrong with that.
I'm not going to ask you, how did you come to believe in yourself? Because I don't think that's the right question. How do you manage or navigate the troughs and the valleys of that natural cycle of being a human?
You just know that's part of life. And you know that the alternative is just unacceptable, because the alternative is just stopping and quitting and giving up. Take on 20% more risk than you are naturally comfortable with and make a decision about which direction you want to head towards and start walking, and don't do anything else for 30 days.
This is the Teacher Talking Time Podcast.
I'm really excited to welcome a good friend of mine to the show today, John Healy. John is also a Canadian entrepreneur. He lives in Italy now, but he's also the founder of one of my favorite companies in ELT, My Speaking Score. My Speaking Score is an AI-powered platform that helps people prepare for the TOEFL speaking test with confidence. John's platform uses advanced speech analytics, data-driven insights, and automated feedback to help make progress measurable and improvement achievable as they go towards their test day. John's education career is a little bit different than a lot of us teachers. He didn't start with teaching. He actually started in the IT world in Ottawa in Canada, sold his company, moved to Korea, taught there for over a decade, met his wife, had a family, and then started his company and moved to Italy. And now, through My Speaking Score, he leads a global team building AI and API solutions measured to help specifically learners and non-native speakers improve their speaking skills. It's a really fascinating story. I'm excited to have him on the show to highlight, as part of this entrepreneurial series, as another way of building businesses. John was very inspiring. I know you'll learn a lot from our conversation. Without further ado, let's get into it. This is John Healy from My Speaking Score. So John, we take our R&D on our guests very seriously, right?
I do know that.
I was doing a deep dive rabbit hole, John Healy Google search, getting ready for this episode.
Okay.
And you know what I found?
Tell me.
I found a YouTube video from 2013 of you being interviewed at a TESOL conference in Korea. Do you remember this video?
I do.
And my takeaway from that, well, you had two goals from that conference, according to yourself. One, you were pitching people on Anaheim Master's Program using Google Plus Hangout. Yeah. And the second thing was you wanted to shake Dick Allright's hand. So my question is, did you shake Dick Allright's hand at the conference?
I didn't shake Dick Allright's hand. I didn't get to track him down. At the time, I was doing my master's degree in TESOL with Anaheim under such luminaries as Ken Beatty, David Noonan, Rod Ellis, Kathy Bailey. It was a great honor to study under them. And every year in Seoul, at Ewha Women's University, if I'm not mistaken, was the Ko-Tesol. And David Bracey was the admin guy in Anaheim, still is to my knowledge, used to send me an email and say, hey, we want you to be our man on the ground, our eyes and ears. And so I would show up and I would do some stuff and I would send it over to him on the information superhighway. And I don't know exactly what he would do with it. He would share it with some prospective students or whatever to give them a glimpse into life in Korea. But at that particular YouTube video that you're referring to, I was in the midst of doing this on behalf of Anaheim University as their rep in Korea. And I was approached by a guy, another expat in Korea, who had this fledgling YouTube channel, and that was my very first YouTube video ever. I can't believe he found it.
Oh, it
That's
still
embarrassing.
exists. Yeah. It's still, you look the same. You look exactly the same as you did then. I thought it was interesting because how fast things change, right? Especially technologically. Google Plus, my God. The one thing Google, not the one thing, but one thing Google got wrong, that just did not work.
It was one of their many misses. And there's a website somewhere that categorizes and catalogs these missteps that Google makes from time to time. That was certainly one of them. That was we better be competing with Facebook.
Right.
And I guess everyone, as they tend to do with a potential new category or a new platform, as everyone, the talk at the time was probably around that time in 2012, 2013, it was, you got to get on Google.
It sounds like AI used to.
If you have your Google Plus account, you got to get your Google Plus domain name because they're going to go fast. You want if you can get @John on Google Plus, it'll be worth a lot of money one day.
Your story, more of a deep dive on my research here. Your story is a little bit different, I think, than a lot of traditional teachers. You did tech first. You had an IT company, a software company, if I understand correctly. Sold it or moved off of that, went into teaching in Korea, and now back into the business part, where a lot of teachers start with teaching and then transition or just add the side thing, as you mentioned. Can you walk the listeners through that journey, Crib Notes version of what led you out of tech and then what led you back to it?
I'll give you the painfully short version.
Okay.
Or the painlessly short version, maybe. So in 2003, I was wrapping up a decade or so in the recruiting business. I lived in Ottawa, Canada. And if you're in Ottawa and you're in IT services, it means you're probably doing business with the government of Canada. International listeners, just recall Ottawa is the capital city and the seat of Parliament for us Canadians, eh?
Sure is.
And so we had my partner and I had a consulting company, which was basically a recruiting company. So we hired subcontracted IT personnel and supplied them to the government of Canada. In those days, the hot markets were for Visual Basic programmers. And then as Y2K approached, a lot of the mainframe stuff. Remember the Y2K days? I'm dating myself here badly.
I remember that. It was a whole thing. The world's going to end. The computers are going to stop working. We're not going to have any more computers. Gone.
No one knows for sure. Business was great in 1999 as a result because the government was spending a lot of money putting in place protocols and safeguards to ensure that nothing would explode. And so for recruiting companies like us, and the model is you find a guy and you pay him $500 a day and you charge the government $700 a day. That's the type of business it was. So that was the start for me out of Bishop's University. And then sold our company in 2003 and was looking for a change. I spent the obligatory 3 months on a beach and thinking about what to do next.
It's a good place to think about
And
it.
it was a great place, and it's apparently still as beautiful. I was talking to someone the other day who'd been recently. I was like, Isla Mujeres, is beautiful. But so long and short, I returned from Mexico, was looking for really to put my feet into the next thing. And I was walking down the street and I saw this big banner. It said, "Teach and Travel." And I thought, that sounds interesting. And of course, I had nothing to do. So I hopped up the stairs, and the woman behind the counter who was about to hand me a brochure recognized me, and it turns out I went to high school with her. So she said, "Oh, John, catch up. I haven't seen you for so long. Come on back." So she gave me the tour of the place. I met the teacher trainers, and it turns out it was a TESOL training place. And so she signed me up. I gave her $1,000 or something and signed up for the 6-week course. And the idea was, at the end of this thing, they guarantee you a job, pick a place on the map, go there, and travel for a year and teach English. So this was all very new, very novel, very exciting. And so I did it. So I decided to do it. And this was the summer of 2003. And so by August, I got my little certificate. I was very proud of it. And I was learning all about how to teach English. I didn't know what a preposition was.
Same. I didn't. I had to teach present perfect on my first day, and I was like, "What is that? Present what?"
Should I have been taught this? I remember thinking as I'm going through the binder. Module 1, English grammar. I'm like, oh my God. Wow. Anyway, so this is 22 years ago. And so I just literally picked a place on the map. South Korea sounds good. So I got a job in South Korea, ostensibly for a year, and stayed for 15. And in the course of that process, met my wife, and now we're full circle.
Serendipitous.
That was the short version. Oh my God.
I have a similar story, but not exactly the same. But Costa Rica was my Korea, and I had no particular reason for going other than I just wanted to escape winter. Because being Canadian is just like, come on. And I was going to go for 6 months. That was my vision. I was like, oh, I'll go for 6 months, skip the winter. And I stayed for 4. It wasn't 15, but I stayed for 4 because I loved it. My first boss there, who is also Canadian, from a little town called Listowel, Ontario. Hello, Corey. We're still really good friends. And he says to me frequently, he says, "You're the only person I know who did this teach abroad for a very short period of time and then made a career out of this. Most people move on.
1 year,
they become accountants, they become whatever. They do the year, lie on the beach, maybe teach a little, maybe not, and then move back somewhere else and become accountants or something." He's like, "You're the only one who's still doing this."
Andrew, you might remember the feeling as being totally new. I remember the first few days, weeks, months very clearly it's like in South Korea at the time, and I'm sure when you go to a radically different place than where you're from and what you're used to, it's like this. I felt like I was on a different planet. It's like everything is different. The cars, the food, the people. You couldn't read any sign on any building. It was all very strange. And I landed in a relatively little city called Changwon, which has since changed its borders and so on. But at the time, I had a population of about 400,000 people. And I remember walking down the street, and I had these gaggles of kids following me around. And you get a sense of what it must be like to be famous. Because you're known, you're the only non-Korean person, and in many cases the only non-Korean person that many of these kids had seen in real life. So that was there teaching 10-year-olds. I'm sure it's changed a little bit in the intervening years. But it's amazing, and so there's something about it that's very intoxicating. It's amazing, And that's what happened to me is 1 year turned into 2, turned into 5. And then in the South Korean system, it's about trying to get to the final prize, which is the university job, right? And so most expats who make decisions, whether they're impulsive as mine was, or whether it's more planful, you tend to start out in these hagwons. These are the training centers around South Korea. I think there's 100,000 of them in the country or something. South Korea is obsessed with education. And so you go and you become one of these expatriate English teachers, and they stick you in a classroom and you teach English. And then the idea is that as you stay and gain experience and you kind of get the lay of the land, you pick up a couple of Skype classes on the side, and then you hear from a guy who knows a guy, there's an opening at this university, and so you can see it. And if you can get the university job, it's your income goes up a little bit, but your workload decreases by 80%.
Okay.
And so that was the deal. So for me, that meant I had to get a master's degree. And so that was the
full circle.
That's the Anaheim. Exactly right.
Okay.
So 1 year turns into 2, turns into 3, and you're training. And then by the time you're there for 6 years, you're like, I think they're going to bury me here. So if that's true, I can't be teaching 8-year-olds.
I don't know if it's a great parallel to building businesses, but I do think living abroad or moving outside of your own circumstances does train you for that. At least it did for me. I did similar to you, just had to figure everything out. Everything was foreign. Everything I thought mistakenly, I've told the story a lot on the show, like that people would speak English, and in Costa Rica, people do, especially younger people, but where I was living, they did not. People ask me, what was the hardest thing about moving abroad? I said, eating. Eating is my answer. I had pizza for the first week I was there because it's the same word. I didn't know how to say anything else. And then I went to the bookstore and I bought like the 501 verbs, Spanish verbs book. And it was in my room and just like scouring through. But you figure everything out, right? I didn't have a job, didn't have anything, place to live, all this stuff. And you just figure it out. And I do think there's a scrappiness to that, where growing a business, or even like going up the ladder in job searches, as you're describing, like working at this school first and knowing where you want to go, but knowing, okay, you need to network a bit, go to this conference, meet these people, get this degree, do this. I do think moving abroad or living in a different country, it's not the same, but I do think there's a parallel to how it is to grow a business too, from the ground up.
Yeah, there's a parallel there because it relies on, you have to be resourceful. So it's great. I can't remember who said it. The idea is that a bird sits calmly on a branch, not because he trusts the branch, but because he trusts his wings. And so when you land on a different planet and you use your resourcefulness, it's that you gain a sense of confidence, maybe that you are a survivor and you can figure it out, you can problem solve and you can adapt. And if you can gain some momentum on that other planet, it does give you, I think, a skill set that is very useful in business as an entrepreneur, because you need to be constantly learning, constantly adapting, and constantly believing that it's not necessarily the thing that you're building is that you're making the big bet on, right? You're betting on yourself.
I want to talk about that because we're doing this series and people that we work with, the word belief and believe in mindset comes up a lot. And I do think that's really important. I also think part of me thinks it's used as a buzzword a lot of the time. So I just believe in yourself. Okay, great. Cool. Done. Check. No?
Yeah.
How did you come, and I know this question is unfair because there isn't one answer to it. It's an ebb and flow, at least in my experience. There's days and even weeks I believe in myself, and then there's days and weeks, there's troughs where that feeling is completely gone.
Yeah.
How do you, so I'm not going to ask you, how did you come to believe in yourself? Because I don't think that's the right question. How do you manage or navigate the troughs and the valleys of that natural cycle of being a human?
Such a great question. I think that it's a learned skill, that grit can be learned. It's not just something that some people have. I think you need to develop resiliency, and without sounding naive or some guy with an optimism bias, as I tend to have one. It's not that when you talk about people with an invincible mindset, this is a myth, right? I think everyone has self-doubt. I think everyone correctly should stop periodically and do a self-inventory and say, am I making the right decisions here? Are there some blind spots that I'm missing? Do I need a checkpoint? Where are my guardrails? Am I heading in the right direction? And so in those moments, self-doubt can visit you. But I think it's like the combination of fear and tenacity, that you prove yourself. You can work through the doubt. You can work through the self-doubt.
How? How do you do that?
You have to dig deep, right? It's the best thing. There's a wonderful book called Peak by Anders Ericsson, and he talks a lot about motivation, about habit building. Malcolm Gladwell stole his 10,000 hour idea, but the idea is that if you want to develop a durable skill, you need to engage with whatever it is that you're trying to learn in a very deliberate, very meaningful, very consistent way. You need to leave your comfort zone. And so part of engaging in material, whatever it is, whatever skill, whatever activity, whatever ambition, whatever is fueling you, in order to do that consistently, you need to be very disciplined, right? And so the flywheel for me has always been, even at times if you don't really believe in yourself, you have to believe in the process. And the process will lead you through it. And because at 54, I know that it's just not all up and to the right? You come to expect the troughs and the hills and the valleys, and you just know that's part of life, and you just keep at it, right? And you know that the alternative is just unacceptable, because the alternative is just stopping and quitting and giving up, right? It can't be that. So then it's got to be the other thing. And wait a second, you thought every day was going to be easy? This is all jogging downhill? So I think the trick is, as I get older, is to not let momentary moments of self-doubt or self-reflection interfere with your overall objective. But twig and wings, you also have to rely on you have to believe in your own capabilities, because something could change. Another earthquake could happen, right? That for me, that means this standardized test could go away. This audience could go away. This new AI tool could replace what we're doing tomorrow, right? So are the things that you're working on right now, are the things that you're concentrating on right now, will those serve you well if you have to flutter away and alight onto another branch? And then the slight undercurrent of fear is, you have a 7.5-year-old daughter, you're 54 years old, come on, man, like TikTok. And so all of that animates me and gets my ass out of bed every morning and you don't have time anymore to really question yourself too much when it comes to, like, you've made a decision. Lock it down.
Lock it down.
Do you feel the same way? Because otherwise you're just a flake. You're a scared flake who is just changing direction all the time.
Right? Yes.
Or you're just on the couch in the fetal position quitting. Either way, you're not doing it.
I'm with you.
Right? You've got to put in the hard
thinking
miles.
Thinking a lot about this. Like, I think I differentiate now, like, self-doubt and risk.
Yeah.
Because I think they're different. Morgan Housel, who wrote the book Psychology of Money, which I love. I don't know if you've read that.
I have.
Great book. And it's one of those, the self-help genre is, for me, is a lot of it's just fluff and it makes you feel good, but it's not like actionable. There's 3 actionable self-help books that I love. Psychology of Money is one, Atomic Habits is another one, and Deep Work by Cal Newport is the third one. Those 3 are like, okay, boom. But Morgan Housel says, or has said, that risk is what's left after you've thought of everything.
Right.
Because there could be an earthquake, there could be a recession, there could be a new tool, there could be, life is unpredictable. So when, in the discussion of self-doubt, is it in your own ability or adeptness to do something? Or is it in the risk of this might not work? And if it's the latter, and someone's listening to this, I think that's even a better reason to do it. Because there's risk in everything. Like, you can get fired if you have a job, you can get laid off.
Yeah.
The company you work for can go out of business because X, Y, Z, whatever. So the risk is what's left when you've thought of everything. I really like that because that's out of your control in a way of those kind of external events. But that mindset that you're describing of, do I have a flywheel? Do I have a process? Can I get up? Do I have a process it's easy to wake up and do it when you feel good. Do I have that same process in place when I don't feel good? And that doesn't mean it's going to work, but I think you're giving yourself a better chance of success when you have more consistency and commitment in that respect, because risk is out of our control, I think.
The way I like to look at it, Andrew, is when you're looking to de-risk something in your life, a pattern, a potential outcome, right? When you're looking to de-risk a decision, is look in the mirror and look out the window. Is it a mirror problem or a window problem?
Oh,
Typically, we spend most of our time looking out the window for risk. Is there a hurricane coming? But almost all of the time, the risk is in the mirror. It's something you're not seeing. It's a weakness in yourself. It's a skill gap. It's an oversight. It's a false assumption. And so I think to depending on your appetite for risk, and I know that people have different tolerances here, it's likely that we probably spend too much time analyzing risk and not enough time executing, okay? Because you don't need to spend too much time in the mirror or at the window to make most of the decisions that you need to make in your life. This is what Bezos talks about in his level 1 and level 2 decision-making framework, right? Is that most decisions are level 2, meaning they're non-existential, meaning that you should be able to make them quickly because they're reversible. It's the revolving door, right? You could say, for example, on my speaking score, how about this new headline? If you bog yourself down in analysis and protocols and procedures and so on, and you spend hours and days trying to figure out, is this the best one? When you should be just testing it, right? There's very little risk here, but you put the process through the same de-risking flow as everything else, right? But you shouldn't. The only time you really spend a lot of time in the mirror and a lot of time looking out the window is when the risk is existential. It's a threat to your existence. And those decision points are very rare, right? They're not common. So it could be that people are set up to worry about risk more than they should. And when you look at it that way, then what are you scared of? Why are you doubting yourself? What's the worst that can happen? When you get enough years behind you, you also have the historical record. It's okay. So everything collapses. You get fired tomorrow. Your landlord comes knocking. Your car gets repoed. Your dog gets hit by a bus. It's the worst day. It's the perfect storm. Okay. In your whole life, how many consecutive days have you spent with zero income crying on the sofa, right? What's the maximum number of days that you're going to be out of commission with no ideas, right? So when you look at it that way, it's of course, people want stability. People want predictability. People want a sense of security and safety. And no one wants to be destabilized for very long. But is this something that's going to destabilize your life significantly? I think most people should be taking on much more risk, right? Buy more Bitcoin. Take more chances, right? But you have to be always doing so with a mindset that it's going to serve you well down the road.
Bezos is interesting. Agree? I agree. Yeah, that's my philosophy. Absolutely. I don't think... I'm very much a believer in the accelerate to fail mindset. Yeah. If you have an idea, I think it's easy to have ideas. I was watching a documentary on comedy a long time ago, and one of the writers said, it's not hard to be funny. It's really easy to make people laugh. It's really difficult to do it in a way that translates onto a screen when people are in their living rooms watching it and you make them laugh. That's the difficult part. It's not hard to make a joke when you're in mixed company. I think everyone has good ideas. Execution is the difficult part, is where do I sit down and actually work on this, bring idea. Everyone has good ideas. I believe that. No business is out there saying, we don't have enough ideas.
Do you know how much advice I had to ignore just to get here? It's that one of the big challenges is how do you separate the signal from the noise, right? If you're in an environment where you're getting a bunch of unsolicited opinions, you're being flooded with ideas, right? Is that a problem for you? You have somebody saying, you know what you should do? You know what you should be doing? Right? No, you got to tune that out. Take on 20% more risk than you are naturally comfortable with, and make a decision about which direction you want to head towards, and start walking. And don't do anything else for 30 days. Okay. And then look at your compass, right? And then look in the mirror, and then look at the window and say, are there any indicators here saying that I've made a bad decision? Accelerate to fail. I heard that on Shark Tank. I don't know who said it. But basically, if you have an idea, would you rather find out in 30 days that it sucks and then you kill it and move on to the next one? Or do you want to work on it for 2 years and then realize it sucks and waste 2 years of your life on something that nobody wants? So would you rather the answer is the same. It's like, when do you want to discover the answer as fast as possible, right? So you can move on. So I'm a big proponent of that. Bezos is an interesting example because obviously it worked out for him. And I'm not a fan of the argument like, Steve Jobs didn't go to college, so I don't have to go to college. Okay. You know, people also didn't go to college and are still in the fetal position on their couch. You know what I mean? I don't think Steve Jobs is the outlier to that. Maybe not. I've never liked that either. But there's this really famous video of Bezos, like on his front lawn in 1996, let's say, describing this new company called Amazon, where he's selling books out of his garage. Have you seen this? Not sure. I've seen one where he's had the hand spray painted sign, Amazon, behind his desk. Because it was a bookstore, right? Amazon was an online bookstore, but he had the inventory in his garage apparently, and then people would order online and he would ship it. Like Netflix kind of shipping DVDs.
to people's
Right.
houses. And we can look at that trajectory, and it obviously has worked out. But those were initial ideas that had a little bit of success, but I don't think they would say that they were like amazing successes. But that first idea springboarded into the next idea, into the next execution. I think you can look at Amazon as a bare bones, and it's still an online bookstore in a way, right? They didn't drastically change, they evolved. So the execution changed. And I do think I'm a big proponent in what you just said, like you got to get started, because if you don't start, you're not going to learn what the challenge is in front of you. And then you solve that challenge, and then what's the next one, and then what's the next one. So that video of Bezos on his front lawn describing his online new bookstore is funny, but it's also, I think, not to use him as an example because that's like such an extreme version of what success can look like. But you got to start somewhere. If you don't start, you won't learn what you don't know.
So true. It is so true. Yeah.
From a distance, my speaking score looks like this very well-oiled machine. But for people listening who, I'm also a proponent of, you want to associate yourself with people ahead of you, which is why I'm excited to talk to you on the show today, because you're way ahead of me. And you learn from those people. And for people listening, my speaking score today is this well-oiled machine. I'm sure you'll be humble and disagree and say, oh no, we have our challenges, and ETS just threw a big curveball into everything a few months ago. But that aside, for people listening, can you walk us through the first 30 days, 90 days of my speaking score? And I guess one of the purposes of this series is to, I don't like the word hope, but just to show that there is struggle and show that there is how people start, because a lot of people listening are starting. What did the first 90 days or arbitrary period of time look like for my speaking score?
It's a great question. And I have a bunch of stories, but let me, for the purposes of our audience, put into a bit of a context that we can all understand. So I'm a teacher. That pivot back in 2003 meant that was it. That was my big decision, and I started going in that direction. That was English as a foreign language. And 1 year turned into 15 in South Korea. But the real origin story of my speaking score is all in the years between 2020 and 2022, in those early years. And so during COVID, I was in Europe. I'd left South Korea with my newborn daughter, and the plan was to come to Europe and to move all of our operations online, just teach English on Skype. Why not? We were doing really well. I had a lot of classes, and it was fine, and it suited us very well. So it means that we could get into a rented Renault SUV and drive around, and you just pull over and do a class, and somebody would PayPal you, and you just go to Airbnb. So I was doing a lot of work with TOEFL speaking, and had a couple of fledgling online courses and so on. And I got a cold email from a Turkish guy living in California. And he said, listen, I've taken the TOEFL 7 times. I can't get my required score. Will you help me? And I was hunkered down at the time in Tuscany when COVID hit. I was in a little town called, if you ever have to hunker down during a global pandemic, it's probably right up there, one of your top choices. Just go and live on a hill in Tuscany.
I'll put it on for the next pandemic. I'll do
For
that.
the next one. Yeah. And Andrew, I was still engaged in this very traditional 1 hour for $50, come and hang out with me on Zoom and we'll do this thing. It seems also very old-fashioned now in light of everything we've done at my speaking score. But to answer your question, it was that conversation with Burkai that started everything rolling. He mentioned something about, there was something troubling him And it led me to send a cold email to ETS and to ask if I could get access to one of their demo accounts for the SpeechRater scoring engine. And ETS, the administrator of the TOEFL, uses this scoring engine, this tool, the software, to quantify aspects of spoken language that we think are normally qualitative, right? So your speaking rate, even your pronunciation, these things can be calculated by AI. It seems a bit obvious at the time, but 5 years ago, this was new. And I got on a call with ETS. It turns out they knew who I was because I was doing some stuff in the TOEFL space and I pinged their radar somehow. And so they gave me a demo account and was working with data in this really exciting new way with Burkeye. And we were like, this is amazing. We felt like we were pulling back the curtain on some secret. It was like, what? Wow, you can calculate speaking rate and these other aspects of your speech, sustained speech, distribution of pauses. We can, and SpeechRater does, calculate the distribution of your pauses inside a 45-second, 60-second response. So this was like, wow. And that was the moment. So simultaneously, we were using SpeechRater, and now it was like, this is before AI, right? In the way that we understand it today, was supplementing my feedback to Burkeye using all of this data. And we were just pointing to data points and saying, let's work on this one, let's improve this one, let's reduce this one. And it was amazing. And he transformed his TOEFL speaking capabilities, went in, got the required score. He said later to me on an interview, we did an exit interview with him a couple of years later, as to solidify this background myth for my speaking score. And he said it was the second happiest day of his life getting his TOEFL speaking score after the birth of his son. And it was like that. So that journey set it all up, because I realized that I could take all of the skills that I'd acquired in all of my years in Korea teaching English and combine them in a way that was totally new, that we could create a category of data-powered feedback that would enable people like Burkeye to just shove me aside and go right to it. Like it's saying, I don't need you anymore. I just need the feedback. And by the way, why are we still in this 1 hour Zoom class format? What is it about an hour that serves my needs as a learner? What is it about an hour? It's just because we're used to getting paid by the hour? So we're going to do 60 minutes.
I think so.
Right?
I think
There's
so.
all these very, and it all struck me as all very odd, all at once. As soon as I saw the speech, it was like, this is it.
That's funny, because you were doing the hour thing. And then this is the moment where it's like, okay, well, this is your clarity. It sounds like your clarity moment, or whatever you want to call
it. The big aha moment, as Oprah would say, the light bulb. But here's the thing, Andrew. So not only did feedback transform the way I was able to elevate his TOEFL speaking performance and increase his TOEFL speaking score and to reduce his fluencies and all the rest of it and make him a better TOEFL speaking test taker. It transformed the whole teaching model that I had previously been using. So I realized, wait a second, what are we doing on an hourly thing anymore? We don't need that, right? So I reached into my old IT toolkit and we just went agile on it a little bit. We just said, let's turn this into sprints. So the idea is 15 minutes every day. Let's have a check-in. Sometimes it was 5 minutes. How you doing? Go use the tool, use the feedback, reflect on it, go through your checklist, examine the transcript. You do it. It was the flipped classroom, data powered, right? And so now, but I'm like, okay, if this is true, that he can self-guide himself with data from the supplier of the test, we can just use SpeechRater to give him feedback on the test, right? And then he can make decisions and improvements on his own. He can come to me for data interpretation or general strategy questions, but this doesn't necessitate a 60-minute call. Then this is an outcome thing. This is not a metered thing anymore. So this is, okay, we're going to spend some time together. This is a 3-month thing. This is a $1,500 thing, right? And he said, that's great. So here's the money. But no, so I shifted him off of this $50 an hour idea. Now, if you take out the time, so now you look at it through, if you want to measure it in time per hour, per dollar or whatever, dollars an hour, it worked out that my hourly rate tripled or something in terms of getting paid per time. So that was the big earthquake and the big setup for my speaking score, is that one, teachers now can do this. They can change the thinking around this antiquated idea of charging by the hour to suspicious students who think, do I really need a 10-hour pack? It's an awfully round number. So it takes away all the cynicism. You can use data. You can empower the learner to help hold them accountable to the process. You can make more money, and you can scale time in a way that you weren't able to before with 1 hour, one student, one Zoom room.
Right.
And so that was the big thing. And then, so the first 30 days of my speaking score was a bit of a disaster. As we were trying to assemble all of these ideas, but only execute one of them, knowing that we would probably fail multiple times and iterate through that. So the early days of my speaking score were like, now we have this scoring engine, so now what?
Okay, that was going to be my next question. Like, talking about execution, it sounds like Burkai was your case study or your beta or your pilot, and the light bulb went off. Oh my God, this guy came to me with an idea I'd never thought of. This is cool. Which a lot of teachers listening, I think, have one or two people like this. How did you then execute? How did you go from maybe it's just this guy who likes this to how did you find other people to like him to test it out?
I had a course out there called TOEFL Speaking Clear Strategies and Tactics. Actually, I used to do the whole TOEFL. So decision one was, is it possible that the market's big enough to cut reading, listening, and writing and just focus on speaking? Let's assume that's true. Is it possible that if Burkai is willing to pay for this is a self-guided thing, that this is a pain point that other people have. I knew the market very well. I had been providing TOEFL speaking and TOEFL training services for a long time. So I thought this is the fit. So there wasn't a lot of market testing in the sense that you would conduct if you're going into the market for the first time with a new idea. So I knew the demand was there. And then it was just about building a tool in a way that would serve the needs of the people who were looking to get the feedback. And how do you position it? And so the position was, this is feedback. The big pain point with TOEFL speaking then and now is the delayed feedback. So I don't know what my score is. I don't know. I don't know how good my English is. So if you could communicate that, then now this is your position, and this is the step that we took. So big decision number one, only focus on speaking. Big decision number two, it's going to be data powered. We're going to create our own category and position it as data powered feedback for self-guided learners. And then it's like, how do you monetize it? And I remember I was with my wife and baby girl at the time. This is in 2022. We'd gotten the license from ETS. We started to build this thing, but it was, I didn't know what I was doing, man. I didn't know what I was doing. And I was on the phone with my very first developer, a guy in India named Ashish. Shout out to Ashish. And I was on a Zoom call with him. And I was pacing up and down underneath in the Uffizi Gallery in Florence.
Sure.
And we had just hooked up the SpeechRater engine. So now users could do a very ugly looking thing. The UI, they could create an account on my speaking score. They go in there, there was just a microphone. and they could record their voice and then get this scored by a speech reader. And we gave them this very ugly looking report. But it was functional. It was a very early MVP. But I remember that day pacing around thinking, what else could this be? What's missing? What's the missing piece? And at the time, creating a bunch of test content was like way out of scope. It's like, where am I going to get all this stuff? Who's going to write it? How am I going to record it? In TOEFL speaking, the tasks are fairly complex. You can't just crank this stuff out. The ETS had teams of test item writers. So it was missing the content, had the capability to deliver the feedback, but on no content. So those first 30, 60 days were very messy as we were trying to figure out what this thing, what we wanted it to become.
Fascinating. You're a go-getter. What allowed you to keep that testing, iterating, it's not the most beautiful thing, to a 60-day period and not let that lapse into a 6-month period?
It turned out to be a 16-month thing.
Okay, there you go.
And we're still iterating. I just pushed a new feature today. This is not a set it and forget it.
Right.
This is an iterative thing. I have 3 people on my dev team. We're always adding and very often trying to subtract and trying to simplify, but we're always trying to improve. So I wish I could tell you, it was just that 60-day ramp. It wasn't. It was really messy and it was fraught and there were a lot of sleepless nights. But one of the things that we always managed to do, and we still do, I'm proud to say, is absolutely obsess about the user. So it's always, this was not like, now I can go fishing. This was just another way to scale. Yeah, I think so. You could think about it that way. I don't. I'm still obsessed with it every single day.
The intersection of trying to make a business that makes money, that's profitable, that serves your needs, but also that is fulfilling. That's the thing that a lot of people want. Before we hit record, we were talking about Denzel Washington and how maybe he doesn't actually love acting, but he's really good at it and he makes a bunch of money. I guess people get into businesses and athletes, professional athletes, Andre Agassi, etc. Lots of examples of people, they just say, I'm really good at this, but I hate tennis. To each their own, but it sounds to me, unless I'm off base, that you found something that you love doing, but it also serves you financially as well.
Well, I'll tell you what, I think the idea of choosing to be a missionary or a mercenary is a false choice. It's not binary, it doesn't have to be. I think somehow in the education subculture, especially among expatriates, you just accept the fact that if you choose to go into English language instruction, you're taking a vow of poverty. That just comes with the deal. That's the bargain you've made, right? It's implied. And I don't think you have to be poor. And you shouldn't think that way if you're a teacher. So if you are a teacher and you're in the EFL, ESL space, question your assumptions about everything, right? Because you could chart a new course, you can pick a new direction, you can become obsessed about a new thing, and there's a way to preserve and protect your missionary credentials and still add a little mercenary action, because it's not wrong to be financially ambitious. You can still be modest. You can still serve the needs of your learners. You can still be a good human being, but you could still make yourself 10 grand a month. There's nothing wrong with that. It's not wrong. You can do it, and you should think about how you can create a life for yourself to do it. And it's because it's better than the alternative. Right? And somehow, if you're a missionary, you can't be profit motivated, I think is wrong. It's something that we're just taught to believe. Likewise, if you're an unfulfilled stockbroker making $1 million a year, no one's crying for you as you're crying yourself to sleep on your silk sheets. But you chose that life too, right? But it's a false choice. I think we maybe present our children this idea maybe too early that we either say incorrectly, in my opinion, oh, you got to follow your passion.
Right.
Or we say what you got to do is you, in a way, have to sell your soul and do something you don't like between the hours of 9 to 5 so you can have the money to do the things you do like when you're off the clock. There's a third way. I'm living proof that there's a third way to do it.
Love it. Love it. I think you're running My Speaking Score as a data-driven product, right? Data-driven offer. I think you're like, I did more deep dives in research for this, you know, your LinkedIn posts, things like this. I call you the king of understanding your customers. And you said, how do you get more clients, more customers for any business? That's the main way to accomplish the third way, as you're describing it. And you talk a lot on LinkedIn about analyze, you know, how long it takes someone to buy from when you capture the lead to you nurture the lead. You've talked about demographics of leads from different parts of the world where they always statistically take longer to buy than others. Some are like automatic, and some demographics, I won't say which, but I read them on your posts, take, I think you said it's upwards of over a year to make a purchase.
Yeah.
Why is this important for people listening? How do people understand those patterns, and how does it help grow? Once you've started the business, how does that understanding of that help your business grow?
Yeah, it's a great question. In order to serve your user well in whatever domain you're operating in, you need to understand their biggest pain point. What's the biggest thing interfering with their ability to get from here to there? And then you need to position your solution as that epiphany bridge, as they say, right? As that solution that's going to help accelerate them out of their pain and to the promised land. And in order to do that, you need to understand exactly who you're serving, what they think about. What are they doing? What are they worrying about? I was on a call, one of my early calls. The Burkeye story turned into be great for many reasons, because in the pharmacy community in the United States, there's this like these little cliques. And so it turns out I became quite popular among Turkish pharmacists in America. Okay.
Sure.
And so I kept on getting referrals to this one and that one. And one of my earlier cases, this is right after My Speaking Score went online and we had a platform that was stable enough to allow more users, that I was still doing a lot of real-time stuff. Again, deepening my understanding of not only how users were responding and acting on the platform, but really what was making them tick, and especially in this pharmacist subgenre. And so this woman was a Turkish woman, and she had taken the TOEFL 23 times, and she was having problems at home. It was a financial strain. The economic incentives for expatriate pharmacists or for new immigrant pharmacists in the U.S. is that you come over, you're already a trained pharmacist in your home country, but you need to recertify. In order to do that, you need to demonstrate English skills. In order to do that, you got to get a high TOEFL speaking score. Okay, so for this cohort of My Speaking Score users represents about 20% of our user base, even though it's probably something like 5% of TOEFL test taker. So she was in this really bad place. She had flown her mother over from Turkey to take care of her kids. She was studying 10, 12 hours a day. It was ridiculous. I finally got a hold of her. We got her through it. But the point is that when you are building systems and workflows and processes, it's easy to shift your focus away from the human and onto the tech stack and onto the data visualizations and the more esoteric stuff about the solution. And I think that you can't do that, right? You have to obsess as much about the outcome of your users as you do about how cool your stuff is on the platform. And so for her, the pain was she just couldn't figure out why she couldn't pass the TOEFL. She just couldn't figure it out. So just kept on taking the test again and again, right? And so we got her there through delivering good feedback, and there was a lot of aha moments, but I got on a call with her afterwards. What it means for her economically is a jump from something like $32,000 a year as an intern, as a pharmacist tech or whatever, to a white coat wearing $120,000 a year earning, right? So it's like a very significant thing. So when you get that straight about what's motivating your users and what the real pain point is, it's not like, I don't have good feedback. It's like this thing hinges on life outcomes that are very significant, that have significant implications, right? About the future education of their children, about the stability of their marriage, about the career, about the status in society, right? And so it was like, yeah. And so those early experiences really shaped the way that we built the culture of My Speaking Score to serve our users. You gotta know who you're helping.
Serve your users first is the takeaway for me, right? Know your customers, know the mission, know what they want. I've heard you describe...
Obsess over them.
Obsess. I've heard you describe yourself as an enabler of people's ambitions.
Did I write that somewhere?
You said it in a podcast I was listening to. And I don't know if that was... But that sounds like what you're describing. Your customers or your clients or your users, they have ambitions. In this specific case, they want to get the white coat and bump up the salary. But in enabling, I think that's a really nice way of looking at a customer set. I think a lot of times when we have a business and it's whatever traction someone has, you're looking at growth and getting more and moving forward. And sometimes obsessing over the customer can be lost, or not lost, but maybe not the first priority. It's what's my next marketing channel? How's my funnel working? How do I optimize this? But as what you're saying, if we're focusing on enabling our customers' ambitions, what are they? And obsessing over getting them there, that's the most important thing. Because if you do that, then the word spreads, the quality. Think of the things that you recommend, like clothing that you buy, that you like, that you tell your friends about. Oh, the fabric's great, it's soft, it's like you're not even wearing a shirt. That's the client experience or the customer experience. If we obsess over that, I agree, that's the most important thing.
The thing is, a tool is never going to give a shit about you. So the belief that I have, Andrew, is that it's AI powered, whatever, right? But it's really human powered. There's really human beings here who give a shit about you. We care about your outcome. We understand your pain, the challenges that you're going through. They're very obvious to me, but I know they're not obvious to you. And so the trick is, and this is an ongoing process, is that how do you communicate the sincerity of your message, right, without sounding sleazy or without sounding salesy? Because people rightly are cynical, they're skeptical, They're like, why does this guy care? And it goes back to my belief that if you could somehow line up the stars in your life to do something that you really care about, to solve problems for people in a very fulfilling way, in a way that enables you to provide for your family and to go to bed at night thinking that you're doing something good in the world, right? This is what teachers try to do. You can do it, you can just do it at scale, but it all starts with figuring out what's the big pain point that you're solving. What are you doing exactly, right? And so the first domino is, we enable people to get access to instant AI-powered feedback. So they can go, oh, my distribution of pauses is too slow in this task too. But that's not it. You have to go 3, 4, 5, 6 dominoes down and to say, this is the sequence, right? So she has a plan. She came from Turkey to New Jersey and living in a 1-bedroom apartment where her husband's driving a taxi at night and they got a 2-year-old baby and the mom coming over cooking. And it's because they have a plan, they have a vision, right? And all of it hinges on this one score, on this one exotic, terrifying standardized English proficiency test. But that leads to that, which leads to that, which leads to that, which leads to that. Burkai bought himself a beautiful car, big house, swimming pool.
Amazing. Amazing.
And he has a son that's exactly the same age as Kayla, my daughter. When you see, if you're lucky enough to do something that helps another human being have the second happiest day of their life after the birth of their child, and you can say, I had a small role in that. I had a small role in making that happen. And then you could figure out, wait a second, I think I can do this at scale. I think we can scale this thing. That's it.
Love that. I think there's this sentiment of AI. Whenever it's, it's AI powered, it's set it and forget it. Someone's going to play golf, going to Isla Mujeres for the weekend. I do think there's
checking the Stripe account on their watch.
Yeah,
ding.
This AI duality of a combination of artificial intelligence and actual intelligence. What you do is amazing, and I'm intrigued by it. But the thing that as you've described it to me here and other conversations, is talking about iterations and execution, and you're always iterating, is when you found out, which everything seems obvious in retrospect, I'm assuming, but maybe wasn't in the time, was when your customers started asking you like, hey, is it possible to talk to a human sometimes, to talk to somebody? And then my speaking score, I may not be getting all the facts exactly correct, but basically you added a feature where your users, your clients can talk to a rater or a teacher or a tutor, because even with an artificial intelligence tool that does exactly what it's supposed to do, there is this need for human connection as well.
So true. So there's always been reach out. And one of the this is 60 days, even 6 months early on, I was trying to figure out, I never wanted to be corporate, right? I never wanted to look like IBM.
Watson.
But I didn't necessarily want to slap my face on there. I just thought it was presumptuous. So this is my new tool. I didn't want to be that guy either. But I wanted it to feel powered by people who care about you for real. And so the support has always been there. You could always get on a Zoom call with me. You still can. You can just send me an email, get on a call with you. I'll help you, right? There's no charge for any of this. But what you're alluding to is a new service that we're doing. And one of my dreams is to bring much more human contact, human services into our user's life if they want it. Here are the 3 types of users. no touch, don't talk to me, don't email me. You're an ATM to me. If I wanted to talk to you, I'd go line up and you could go to the bank teller, but I don't want this any human at all. That represents about 20% of our users. So as soon as they sign up, they're like, don't email me. Great. Okay, you guys are total DIY. This is the hardcore, and the data is good enough, and everything and all our resources are good enough. For about 50% of our users, they like a light touch. That's some type of webinar, replay, course, training, YouTube video. And then there's another 10 or 20% that's sort of high touch. And we can help those people too, again, with no cost fluency training. So Nathan Mills, I think the best accent coach in the world, in my opinion, used to work for ETS for a decade, listening to TOEFL speaking responses. He says he's listened to 150,000 TOEFL speaking responses.
Good Lord.
But he's also an accent coach. He's also a very fine guy. He's also a wonderful, very nice guy. He's perfectly suited to this job. And so he runs fluency classes every single day now for some of our users who have opted into that tier on the platform. So the long-winded answer to your short question is that part of our customer obsession is meeting you wherever you are in the touch spectrum. So if you don't want us to bug you, you immediately go to a protected list. We never talk to you. We never email you. We don't even look at you. For the light touch, a little guiding hand behind the back, you come in, we send you nice emails once in a while and say, hey, what about this? What about this? And you can get on a call with me. And then for the high touch, we give you full training. And where Nathan's in there, he's in your dashboard. Let's go. Your vowel score is too low. Come on.
Love it. We coach teachers on the same thing, having different versions of. A lot of people assume that, I have to create 3 different products. No, it's the same thing. What is your involvement in, for all of those 3, I'm making assumptions here, but I can do this for any product. The outcome for those 3 people are the same. I always use the analogy of, do you want to drive to work in a DeLorean or do you want to drive in a Ferrari?
Yeah.
They're both going to work. Like, you're going to arrive there. You're going to arrive a little sooner in the Ferrari, likely, depending on traffic. And a lot of comfort and a lot of gadgets, and it's going to be a lot more fun. The DeLorean might break down once or twice on the way.
There's theoretically,
you get there.
Theoretically, there's the DIY and the DWI. Oh, that doesn't sound right.
It doesn't sound
done with you. WY.
Yes. It doesn't sound good in the driving analogy.
No, right. We're just when I was living in South Korea, I had a student in China, and guy, and I called him George, and he wanted to pay me $5,000 to come and live with me for a week, just to speak as much English as possible. So naturally I said, yes, come on over. And he did. And he got his TOEFL and everything. But you reminded me of something that I've been thinking about half jokingly. So in my speaker school, we have a very low entry package, and you can scale up. We have nothing over $200. And the $200 one gives you all the credits, all the speech rater feedback, all the E-rater, all the AI, all the Nathan you want, right? So that's all you can eat for 30 days. It's about $7 a day. But I was thinking, from a marketing point of view, what if I had a $10,000 thing? Would it A, make the $199 thing look more attractive? B, maybe there's a rich person out there. Hell yeah, I'll go. So
live with Nathan.
Come to Florence. Hey, you don't come to see me. Go to see Nathan. Go to Ohio. No, the idea would be you come to Florence. We'll put you up in an Airbnb, and there'll be some. So
joking,
that's super high touch. But again, it's only half joking.
Someone will I've always said that when people ask about how do I price my thing, higher than you think, because someone will pay it.
Here's the thing, Andrew. We've talked about this in other contexts before. It's a bit oversimplified, but would you rather sell 1,000 guys a $10 widget or one guy a $10,000 widget? But here's the thing. Back to the L1, L2 analogy, the Bezosian thing. This is not an L1. Just do it. Accelerate into failure, as you say. Create an offer. You have 50,000 people on your list. I do. Send it out. Look at the open rate. Right? Figure it out. What's the worst that's going to happen? People are going to say the guy has a $10,000 offer.
Walking through
there is a $10,000 offer out there. I know somebody who has a $12,000 offer.
I would create a waiting list, as if you're asking me. You're asking me, but I'm going to place myself into this.
Yeah.
I would create an email that would ask people to join a wait list. I wouldn't mention the 10K. I would just describe this incredible experience. Like, anyone interested in being put up and spending 30 days in Florence, blah, 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 would go to see these things and describe everything. If you're interested, click this link. It'll add you to the wait list. See how many people click it. Because they always want to know if they're interested in the thing first before they know how much it costs, right? And then next email
I'm going to do it.
Hey, this is a 10,000 thing for 30 days. Here's click this thing if you want to find out more. And then there's your answer. That's what I would do.
Again, why not? Even before you create the offer, you could send out a survey, right? And say, we're looking at various ways to do boot camps in other parts of the world or whatever. The point is, and these meanderings are not totally useless, because back to your idea execution thing, it's like, it's only a ridiculous idea until it's not. Right. So you're not starved for ideas, you're starved for execution. As you say, you iterate through it. So you have the idea is high ticket offer. Now it's about execution. Do you just slap it on your thing? Do you do a survey, or do you do a wait list? How do you do it? How do you test the market? And how do you do it in a way that doesn't confuse your audience?
And the value from the client, right? Because like in your case, for the person that says, don't contact me, how do they see value? You're not going to charge them $5,000 and then they never get to talk to you. That's probably not going to work. But to go back to your, like, would you rather, I always advise people, like, how much in big picture, what do you want to earn? Like that whatever you write down is not going to be the number, because things change. And then you do the math on it, you work backwards. Would you rather sell 100 people at $10 to get to 10,000? Or do you want to sell one guy at 10,000? Or do you want to sell 4 at whatever it is? At a certain point, once the thing that you sell, if you're doing more, a lot of teachers do high touch, which is great. Selling a $500 thing and selling a $1,200 thing, the difficulty level is the same for me. Once you get the psychology of money for people, once you get past a certain threshold, selling 500 and 1,200 is the same objections, the same. So you might as well make it 1,200, because you're going to have the same difficulty as a 500.
The same energy. It requires the same energy, and the problem itself is the same. And in fact, you could argue, like, I've never wanted to be on the low end of the market. Are there other players out there that serve that part of the market, the $7 a month, $12 a month, $39 a month? Enjoy that market. I've never found that to be a particularly exciting part of the market. The high volume, low cost, low margin, low price.
High churn too with that.
And you maybe tend to attract other types of customer problems that you don't want. But here's the thing, and this is a theme that's been running through our conversation. It's not the biggest risk to your life, to your business, is not being wrong. It's being confused. That's the biggest risk, right? Is trying to do it all or to not be focused, right? So the only risk here on this theoretical $10,000 offer to my speaking scores offer stack is that it's confusing to me, to our audience, to our core customers, to our team. What are you doing? Is this a cash grab? So that's you look in the window, you look in the mirror, and you decide, But is it an existential threat? If no, decide. Just do it. Yes or no. If no, put it aside. If it's a maybe-ish, not now, maybe later, put it on the shelf, but get on with getting on. You got to keep the main thing. The main thing is that we have this user base that have these upcoming test dates circled on their calendar that are causing them a great deal of anxiety, right? And so, well, maybe intellectually fun to start crafting these exotic, Florence getaways where you're looking at the Ponte Vecchio as you're practicing English in Florence.
There's a point of confusion there too, or indecision, because I do think people get shiny object syndrome sometimes as well. And to let the business, let the business grow, and you got to stick without thinking, what else could we do? What else? Sometimes that's a distraction, and sometimes that's a good thing to do. And it's a skill, I think, to acquire, to know when, you want to add something to your stack, when it makes sense. Or is this just, I'm feeling a little bored and I need something to do? But then I don't have kids. You have one, but I use this analogy. Maybe it's wrong. If you have one kid, as you do, all the attention, right? If you have two, split, three, split, four, and then more. And then does it become, you're doing kind of like a jack of all trades, master of none situation, where what's the hero of your business? And that always needs to be the same thing.
It's such a great point. It's such a profound point, because the trick is, how do you say no to a good idea? That's the killer, right? Saying no to a bad idea is easy. Not acting on any idea is the biggest sin. But you have to be courageous and disciplined enough to say no to good ideas, and we do it all the time. There's a lot of good ideas. This $10,000 idea might be a good idea, right? But it probably, when you put it through the mirror window test, you're probably going to land on a hard no, because it's not a good idea for you and for your customers, right?
Or even just in terms of timing as well. Like, it doesn't make sense right now. But as we wrap up here, John, I want to imagine that it does happen, that another version of me somewhere signs up for this. They come to live with you in Florence for 30 days. Because I like to end these episodes on this question, because a lot of people look at entrepreneurs online and see other businesses and just see the front view of the store, the front window. Things look great. It's shiny. It's clean. And don't see the work that we all know goes in behind it. If someone were to shadow you for a week, what would they be surprised by?
I think they'd be surprised by the relative structure that I put around my day. I'm an early riser, and there are pockets of intense work that I do during the day that have a fairly predictable cadence. As everybody knows, in the post-COVID era, working from home comes with its own set of challenges. During the summer, we have a 7.5-year-old running around, and I got to be a dad and everything. But I think you'd be surprised by the relative structure and cadence of my day and the relative calm. It wasn't always this way, man, I can tell you. But there were some 3 a.m. phone calls to India a few times. But it's pretty stable and calm.
Love that.
When you have a clarity of vision, Andrew, it's, this is what we're doing. This is it. Let's go. Check the KPIs. Keep doing it. Keep trying to do what you're doing. It only a little bit better, a little bit bigger every day.
All right. John Healy, my speaking score. Thanks for joining us.
Andrew Woodbury, it's been an enormous privilege and an honor to be with you. Thanks for having me.